I'm Richard Gearhart, founder of Gearhart Law, a full service intellectual property firm specializing in patents, trademarks, and copyrights.
And I'm Elizabeth Gearhart, not an attorney, but I work at Gearhart Law doing the marketing, and I have my own startup.
Welcome to Passage to Profit, the road to entrepreneurship, where we talk with inventors, small businesses, and discuss the intellectual property that helps them flourish. Today, we have a very special guest, a thought leader of thought leaders, Nicky Billou. He's the co-founder of ECircle Academy, and he's an advisor for entrepreneurs. And I'm really looking forward to speaking with him.
Me too. And then we have two presenters. We have Daniel Carcillo with Wesana Health. He is going into a brand new area of health, and it's really exciting, and I can hardly wait to hear what he says about this. And then Jav Sid with Cut and Make Crafts. And what she's doing is fascinating. She is so creative, and the things she does are so cool. You just have to hear her explain it.
That sounds great. But before we get to our distinguished guests, it's now time for IP in the news. And what are we discussing today, Elizabeth?
Well, artificial intelligence has been ruled by the patent office that it alone cannot be an intellectual property holder.
Right.
It can't own
can't
it.
be the basis for a patent.
Right. But it's sneaking its way in by doing partnerships with people.
Those sneaky computers. Get ready for the Matrix for sure.
So, right. Do you want to talk about this?
Sure. Yeah. So this is a copyright case, and a New York City artist was granted a copyright for the first time by the Library of Congress for an artistic work that was generated by artificial intelligence. And I really think that that's pretty interesting. First of all, if you're a computer, you can get intellectual property for copyrights, which are artistic works of expression, but you can't get a patent, which patents protect inventions. So it's really interesting how the field of intellectual property and artificial intelligence is evolving, and it seems to be going in two different paths. And I have to say that since copyrights deal with artistic works of expression like movies, books, paintings, sculptures, all of those things, that it's really kind of interesting that a machine can create an artistic work of expression and get past the test for creativity, where normally that would be something you think would be a human trait.
Right. And since this is intellectual property news, I have to give credit. So this was an article on US News written by Adam Schrader. The artist was Chris Castanova, and there's a quote in her. So she said, I tried to make a case that we do own copyright when we make something using AI. I registered it as visual arts work. And so she did have input into it. So it wasn't just AI. It was, I think, her work too. So I just think that's interesting because I think a lot of people are using AI to.
Right. And approval by the Copyright Office is sort of a stamp of our artisticness, right? And creativity. And so the fact that machines are evolving now to the point where they can meet that standard, which we only thought humans could meet, is interesting comment on the development of technology.
So creators, feel free to use AI. It's not
what's
going to
funny
hurt you,
is a lot of
apparently.
the artists I know are like computer phobic, right? They would not touch one if they didn't have to. But anyway, it's time for Richard's Roundtable. Nicky Billou, welcome to the show. So nice to have you here. What are your thoughts on this?
I gotta say, it's fascinating as all get out that the government is recognizing that machines can create art and is granting copyrights to them. I'm curious as to why they wouldn't also recognize patents in the same way, but it leaves opportunities open for producers and creators to use these machines to create a lot of good work. So I think that's good.
Yeah, I mean, as long as the work is moving, right, and it is creative and does something for you on an emotional level, doesn't matter whether a human created it or a computer. That's an interesting question. Daniel, what are your thoughts on this?
It's an interesting world that we're living in, but it's exciting. And I think that if you can get creative enough and work within the constructs of getting protection and IP around building a business, and setting that foundation, I think all the power to people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think if there's any downsides to this. I mean,
Well,
what
I
if you
mean,
just have a computer that spits out gazillions of drawings, and then they register these things, and now the company goes around suing everybody
well,
who
where does
makes
the
it themselves.
programmer come in on this too?
Right.
So, I mean, the programmer was the one that programmed the artificial intelligence. What are their rights? I mean, it could be a mess.
Yep. It could. Jeff, welcome to the show. What are your thoughts?
Thank you so much for having me here. Well, it's kind of tricky. Like in one way, it's a really good thing that there are laws in this area, because as someone who sells digital cut files, digital graphics, it gets very complicated at times when users don't understand what their rights are and how they're supposed to work with the files. And they take it very lightly. Now that there are laws which are related to the machines, it's like we are moving forward rather than moving backward. So I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that for once the law is kind of keeping up in technology. Usually it lags behind it for about 5 years, but in this case they're addressing the question early, and as Nikki said, it's an interesting world, and we're fortunate to be in a position where we can just kind of follow along with this. So, and that brings us to our guest this evening, Nicky Billou. He's the co-founder of ECircle Academy and an advisor for Entrepreneur, and he is the host of the Thought Leader Revolution podcast. And he is the #1 podcaster on this topic of thought leadership. So we're really looking forward to speaking with you, Nicky. How did you get interested in the subject of thought leadership?
That's a fantastic question. A few years ago, I was a top-rated health and fitness coach. I had a brand called the CEO Health Coach. I worked with a lot of top CEOs. I worked with billionaires. I worked with #1 salespeople. I worked with Olympic gold medal athletes, world record holders, and all that good stuff. And I'd been going through a period of transition in my life. I'd gone through an unexpected marriage breakup, and it had me do a whole lot of soul searching. And the very last fitness client I had was a really interesting guy. His name was Michael. So Michael and I, at the end of every workout, we'd go take a steam bath together, and we just have this little 2-person mastermind going on. And one of these days that we were doing this, I just looked over to him. I said, "You know what, man? I really enjoy these talks. We should expand this mastermind to more people, and have these great conversations." And he looked at me, and all of a sudden he just fixed me with this 1,000-yard death stare. And he said, "That's a great idea. And we should call it the Entrepreneur Circle, or ECircle for short. And we should charge for it." And lo and behold, that's what we started to do. And he went to Australia. There is an organization there called Thought Leaders Global, and they run a program called the Thought Leaders Business School, created by a fellow named Matt Church. Incredible stuff, because what they've done is they put over 1,500 really bright people through a program and a methodology that showed them how to take that expertise, that genius within, and monetize it as a top level advisor, as like a consultant, if you will, a coach. But they hated that term. They said, "No, you're not a coach. You're not a consultant. You're not a speaker. You're not an expert. You're a thought leader. You're a leading thinker in your space. And that's how we want you to brand yourself." I got excited about this with Michael. We studied it for a while, and we took a lot of what we learned from those guys, added it in with a little bit of our own, North American pizzazz. And lo and behold, we just created something to really help good, smart, bright people be able to take that genius within, which is not what you do for a living, by the way. I want to be really clear on that. Your genius is not your job title. Everyone should write that down. My genius is not my job title. Okay. And use that genius to really find a way to be of service to people who are hurting. Because after all, what is business, Richard? Business is about solving acute problems for people. Business is not a numbers game. Business is a people game. It's about solving acute problems for people. So thought leaders give a lot of thought to people. Who are the people that have the types of acute problems my special brand of expertise can solve? Really, that at the end of the day is what got us excited about this. And we started our podcast, and lo and behold, we're over 400 episodes. We interviewed some incredible people on it, like Ken Blanchard, the 1 Minute Millionaire, Dr. John Maxwell, who's the world's leading expert on leadership, the founders of Chicken Soup for the Soul, Jack Canfield, Mark Victor Hansen, Oprah Winfrey's coach, Marie Forleo, and all kinds of tremendous people. And we've attracted people who are excited about the prospect of using that genius within to monetize a beautiful, brilliant business that pays them wonderful money while they have the greatest impact possible on the people in the world.
Okay, I have a couple points here. One is a point and one is a question. So first of all, thank you, Nicky, for giving us so much information and questions we could ask you. You are like an excellent podcast guest, radio show guest. So it makes our job so easy. I can tell you're a pro. But I just want to mention here that Nicky's Millionaire Maker helps people make over $1 million per year. And he has helped 11 men and women add 7 to 9 figures to their businesses, and 70 plus men and women add 100,000 to 500,000 to their businesses. Not shabby. So I'm assuming you work straight with entrepreneurs, but the real question I have for you is how to add 30,000 to your income in the next 30 days. I got to hear this.
What a great question.
I was
Okay.
going to say, sell your car, sell your couch.
You'll be lucky if you make 3,000 if you do that.
I don't know if we could sell our couch.
There you go. There you go. That's
But
a great
anyway,
question.
No, that's a great question.
That was a question.
Do you mind?
I wanna hear
Do you
that
mind
too.
if before we start, I tell you a little bit of my backstory and I tell you another really quick story, because I think that'll set the stage for giving you a really powerful answer. I'm originally an immigrant from the Middle East. I'm a Christian from Iran. And when I was growing up, I was a little boy. The Islamic Revolution was happening in Iran. And my father thought, you know what, this was going to be hard for us to continue to live in Iran, given that, the new government that was coming in was all about living a certain way, having certain rules and laws. And it wasn't just the way he wanted us to live, wanted to raise our family. So he brought us to the West. And, I've been very grateful ever since to my dad for bringing us to the West. And I know a lot of people these days think that the West has got all kinds of problems. And I get that. The West definitely has all kinds of problems. But I'll tell you, it's still the most amazing place, the most wonderful place that gives you the opportunity to go out there and create the life of your dreams. And we get to live free. And we can criticize our governments and not be beaten up in the streets like it's happening back in my home country. So just wanted to say that first and foremost. And my father, he was an entrepreneur. And he was the greatest man I knew. Dad would uplift people all the time. If you needed a job, Dad would get you a job. If you were going to give a start in business, he would help set you up, even if you were competing with him, because that wasn't what was important to him. What was important to him was to help people. And if you worked for him and you were looking to buy a house, a car, an apartment, you didn't have enough money, Dad would make up the difference and help you get that. And you might be thinking to yourself, who does that? Well, my dad did that. First of all, he was a man of faith, and he believed he'd been blessed by God, and he had an obligation to share those blessings with everybody else. But he also did it because he had the financial wherewithal, and he could, and that's made me want to be just like my dad. My dad was the greatest man I've ever known, right? He's a man who I wanted to be like. So I became an entrepreneur. Here's what I saw when I became an entrepreneur, that a lot of good people, and maybe you folks listening can relate, they want to make a difference for their fellow man and woman, but they don't want to come across like they're pushy. They don't want to come across like they're salesy. They don't want to come across like they reek of commission breath whenever they're around somebody, right? So
I worry about coffee breath. I've never thought about commission breath.
I love it. So these folks, they don't go after business that they should go after because of that. And as a result, the good people they could be helping don't get helped by them. And maybe you can relate, right? And so some other person, some charlatan marketer with no compunction about whether or not they help people will just go out there, they'll sell the sizzle, they'll get the business, and they don't care whether they deliver or not. And I saw that. And it was just because people had a negative connotation around the word sales, you know? And I thought to myself, well, what if we reframe selling into serving? Nobody wants to be sold, but everybody wants to be served by a caring advocate. And if you want to make $30,000 in 30 days, that's a fantastic question. The first thing you got to do is you got to come from serving people. Who are the people that you're out to make a difference for? Because remember, everyone that you're doing business with is someone's son, someone's daughter, someone's brother, someone's sister, someone's father, someone's mother. They're a hero to somebody. They've got hopes, dreams, fears. They've been disappointed by life, and they've been disappointed by someone who's in your position, who's let them down, who's promised them the moon and not delivered. And you've got to be that man, that woman who's all about making that difference for that individual. You got to give them your heart. You got to care about them and love on them, whether or not they do business with you. And you've got to say to yourself in every interaction you have with your fellow human being, I am going to give this person all I got. I'm not going to give up on them. I'm not going to let them down. And I'm going to come from service. If you do that, and you don't let this thought of, oh my God, am I pushy? Am I salesy? Do I reek of commission breath come in your way? And you let yourself have the appropriate number of conversations with people that need your help, you will hit $30,000 a month. That's point one. Point number two is, though, you can't have a Mayo message. You can't sound like everybody else. Someone asks you what you do, you can't say, I help people deal with overwhelm. I mean, that's wonderful, but that's not a problem anyone's looking to solve. But if you solve a problem called, I help you secure your patents so you don't have to worry about your hard-earned work going down the drain, or I help, repair relationships that look like they're beyond repair, or I help heal people's health who've got diabetes, who are at risk of stroke and heart disease, I help get rid of all that. Now, those are real problems. And you need your message to be fine-tuned to address those real problems. Wow. So when you do that, people are going to chime into you. They're going to dig you. They're going to dig your message because they know you're a good person, you care about them, and you actually have the skills to solve a real problem that is vexing them, that is hurting them. Because remember, what did we say business was? Business was a people game, not a numbers game. Write this down. Business is a people game, not a numbers game. And business is about solving acute, that's level 9 or 10 problems for people. That's all it is. And that's what you need to do if you want to make $30,000 in the next 30 days. If you just do that, if you show that you care, if you come from your heart, if you come from love, if you come from making a difference, and if you get your message dialed into the point where people understand how you can help and how you can help them with their acute problems, $30,000 a month is going to be like easy for you to get to. Well, and once you hit that figure, you'll be able to add even a zero at the end of that and take it to $300,000.
Okay, I can tell Richard's dying to say something here.
No, well, I'm listening. I'm kind of like in the space between, should I chime in or should I keep listening? Because this is good stuff. And I just wanted to say, I really liked the point about seeing that this person is somebody's kid, or this person is somebody's spouse, or this person has their kids, and seeing them as people and not as prospects, and people who have had the same challenging experiences we've all had as human beings. And I think if you see people in that way, I think you're motivated to help them and really like sort of partner with them, put yourself in their shoes. If this is what, if I can solve the problem, then I could do this, I could do that. And I think that's just a really great way to look at things. And I feel like I've learned something today. So
you have learned something. And A lot of marketing is wordsmithing, but what I like about your approach is that you're not just changing the words, you're feeling it. You're changing the feeling.
Yeah.
And that comes through when you're dealing with people, I strongly believe.
I agree with that. I think that when you're when we're talking to a client or another person or business people are talking, it's really the human connection that creates the business, right? It's the feeling that the people get between each other that ultimately creates the connection that leads to leads to the sale or whatever you call it, the transaction.
So, Nikki, do you take private clients? So, do people come to you to work with you to figure out how to improve their business skills or become thought leaders? I guess you have a course on teaching people to be thought leaders, right? So, do you work privately with people on that?
Well, we usually do it through our program. Like we've got a workshop that we teach. I don't do a lot of one-on-one clients anymore these days. It's harder to make a big impact that way. It's easier to serve a lot more people when you get to work with people in a group. And another thing about people being in a group, and this is incredible, is we really curate incredible people, and when you're around people who are also heart-driven, who want to make a difference, it's just wonderful to be in the same space, whether it's over Zoom or whether it's in person. And you get to learn from each other. Incredibly, I was having a group coaching session with folks, and they asked me a question about how to help them solve a particular problem that was going to help them, add another $30,000, frankly, to their mastermind sales in a month. And I gave them what I thought was a pretty good answer. And then someone else in the group said, actually, can I chime in? And I said, yeah, sure, chime on in. And they gave a better answer than I did, like a way better answer. And I said, that's good. Do what she said. You know what I mean?
So anyway, we have to take a break now for a commercial, but we'll be right back. This is Passage to Profit with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart, our special guest, Nicky Billou, co-founder of ECircle Academy and host of the Thought Leader Revolution podcast. We'll be back with more Nicky right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to Passage to Profit. Our special guest, Nicky Billou, and he's just had some amazing insights and amazing advice. I feel so motivated right now that I want to go out and start serving people, right?
He is a thought leader after all.
He is a thought leader. So Kenya, welcome to the show again. And thank you so much for joining us. Do you have any thoughts or questions for Nicky?
I do. I'll say, I first and foremost, I enjoyed listening to your interview so far with Richard and Elizabeth. And one of the things I thought about is like, what makes a good thought leader? Like, what are some of the attributes of someone that's a good thought leader?
That's a fantastic question. So number one is you got to care about your fellow man and woman. That's first and foremost. I call that being a heart leader. That's being a thought leader who leads from the heart. And I think that's super, super important because, people have evolved, you know what I mean? And buyers have evolved in the marketplace, and they can spot a phony a mile away, and they're not into that, 1950s, 1960s, 70s style Fuller Brush salesman. It's got this, it does that, it cuts, it makes breakfast. They're not into that stuff anymore. They're looking for a real human being who's out there to make a difference for them. And I got to tell you, one of the things we teach our clients is learn who to say no to, even if they want to give you money, even if you really could use the money. You should say no to certain people because you're not the best solution for them. I'll tell you a story of a coaching client we had. This fellow was a phenomenal relationship coach. Okay, and he specialized in working with men going through relationship crisis. I.e., their wife said, bye-bye, sayonara, get out of here. He specialized in helping turn that around, or if it couldn't be turned around, at least, having it move forward in such a fashion that it wouldn't utterly devastate and destroy all parties involved. You know what I mean? So there was an opportunity that came his way to do some business mediation. Okay, and he could use the money at that point. He was having a bit of a lean spell, and he came to me and he said, "Should I take this?" And I said, "Well, tell me, do you think you'll do a good job for the client?" And he looked at me and said, I'll do a decent job. I said, no. Will you do the type of job that you're able to do? like, you know, the type of job I'm talking about, what you did for that client, the other client. And, you know, he looked at me and he said, you know what? No. So he turned them down. They were shocked. They were ready to write him a check. Money was no object for them. And he said, look, this just isn't my area of expertise. I'll get you somebody else who is way better at this than I am. And here's what was absolutely amazing for him. The people at that company could not believe this guy turned down Sure Business because he didn't think he was the right person to do it. They started telling everybody, and I mean everybody. So this guy's fame spread in the business world, you know, that these folks dealt with. And as you can imagine, some senior executives at these organizations heard about this fellow. And a couple of them called him up when they were going through marriage difficulty. They didn't even think of calling somebody else. They called this guy. They didn't dicker with the price. They just paid him what he asked, and he was able to help them and get a really, really good result for them. Why is that?
He's the Santa Claus in Miracle on 34th Street.
You got it. Well said. Well said. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. You know, so as a thought leader, you need to know what business to say no to. Okay. And secondarily, your message has got to be dialed in, and it cannot be about you and your secret sauce and how great you are at what you do. Nobody wants to hear about that. Can you? Nobody wants to hear about your program, how amazing it is. Now, you might like your program, grant you, it may be a great program, but you know what people are interested in? They want to know how you can help them. They want to know if you understand their problems. They want to know if you truly care. They want to know if you're able to solve that problem. And your entire focus in all of your thought leadership and all the IP you create shouldn't be about how awesome your IP is, but it should be how amazingly well you can solve problems for people with your IP. Because that's when people become interested in finding out about your IP. In any given marketing conversation or sales conversation, 95% of the conversation should be about your client, their problem, and their aspiration. That's it. What's their problem? Where do they want to go? What's the hell they're in? What's the heaven they want to get to? And then you and what you do, that's the bridge that takes them from hell to heaven. And that should be at most 5% of the conversation. If you do that, then people will become intensely interested in your IP, in you, because they'll get the sense that A, you care, and B, that you actually know what the heck you're talking about and you can actually help them. That's when they'll start to become raving fans, raving advocates of you and what you do.
I think that's great advice. And, you know, that's being a good listener and showing whoever it is that you're working with, that after you understand the problem, you have an approach that sounds logical to them is the first step in any business relationship. And so, I mean, I couldn't agree with that. I couldn't agree with that more.
Right. Because nothing gets me when somebody comes up to me and says, you know, I can help you with dog training. And I'm like, really? Because I don't have a dog. No, it's like, don't you know anything about me? Like, why would you say that to me?
So I want to know who has approached you lately for dog training.
It's a silly example. But people do when they're putting out that wide net and they are and they don't take the time to get to know you. They do try to sell you things you don't want or need.
Right.
All the time.
And
All the time.
they're coming from their perspective and what they need. And I think it's natural for people just to kind of start shutting down after a while, because I'll listen to what somebody has to say for a while. But if it's always all about them and it's never about me, that's when I start to kind of lose interest and I start looking at my watch and, you know, saying, where don't I have an appointment someplace or something? So, no, great points.
So,
I just want to ask him, what was it like to interview Barbara Cochran from Shark Tank?
Man, she's super bright. She's crazy bright. It was a lot of fun interviewing her.
Yeah.
It was an on-point interview. It was, you know, she had a certain start time, she had a certain stop time. But really, really bright lady. It was a total honor to have her on the show.
did you, I mean, so what did you, do you remember what you discussed with her? And what
Well,
you
it was
talked to
6 years ago, so I got to be honest. I don't remember. I'd have to go listen to the episode again, but I remember she was very sharp. I remember her answers were very crisp, and she was fun. You know, we had a good time. We had some laughs. We talked about some important points that are relevant to every entrepreneur. It's great to have her on the show.
And so who was your favorite guest on Thought Leader Podcast?
My favorite guest is someone you probably never heard of.
Mm-hmm.
His name is Mark von Muser, and I actually love him as a guest so much that I hired him to be my mentor, and I've had him on the show 8 times. He has been on more than any other guest. No other guest has been on more than 3 times.
Wow.
And the reason Mark's my favorite guest is because he combines the energy of a Navy SEAL with that of Jesus Christ. You know, he's
Holy
just
cow.
he's just got this get up and go, get it done kind of energy.
The Navy SEAL or Jesus Christ? Oh my gosh.
And he's got love in his heart for people. And I learned a lot from Mark about how to. If you ever go listen to my show, I'd look up any of the episodes with Mark and have a listen to them. You'll get a ton of value out of there. But if I can tell you a story.
Sure, absolutely.
So a few years ago, we had a lady come to us who had been a top-level thought leader. She was the country director for Canada for one of the largest personal development organizations in the world, one of the largest and the oldest. Been around since the 60s. And she brought someone on board to work with her to help her grow the business. But unfortunately, they clashed. If you know the story of Apple and Steve Jobs in the early days when he brought John Scully on board, and Scully ousted him, and Steve, the founder, was gone. It's kind of what happened to her. She got ousted, and she was, for 18 months, she was floundering. And someone introduced her to us. And when we met her, we could see that, first of all, she needed someone to love her and care about her, which we brought her that love and care. And then she needed someone to really help her dig into her expertise. And I told her again, your genius isn't your job title. So stop looking for what you did for your genius. And we found out her genius. Her genius was she had an incredible amount of empathy and an ability to help people deal with really difficult, painful, emotional issues like burnout. So she put a program for entrepreneurs with $10 million plus companies that were dealing with burnout. And it was about to have them lose everything. So in her first month, she did $10,000 in sales with us. In her second month, she did $12,000. In her third month, she did $18,000. And in her fourth month, she did $62,200. And that number will become germane in a moment. She lives in Ottawa. I live in Toronto. That's about a 5-hour drive from one another in Canada. My oldest son plays soccer, or real football as we call it,
right?
Instead of American football, because you actually use your feet to kick the ball around in that sport. And so he had a tournament in Ottawa at the time, and she had a son his age. So I called her up and I said, hey, we're coming to Ottawa. There's a soccer tournament. Would you and your son like to come meet us there? Maybe watch a game. We'll grab some lunch after. And she said, yeah, sure. So she brought her son over and, watched the game, and we had a great time. And then my son and I left. We went back home. A few weeks later, we had one of our quarterly branded thought leader immersion workshops. This is a 3-day workshop where we really teach people how to add a 0 or 2 to their practice. And we come to what we call the registration opportunity, or the upsell. And the way I do it is I ask our members to share their experience. It's a lot more effective than me saying how great we are, right? So I said, who'd like to share? And before I could pick on anybody, she bounded on stage and said, me. And I'm like, okay, great.
Very enthusiastic.
Absolutely. And, she took one look around the room, and then she started to cry. And I mean, bawl. And like any red-blooded man faced with a crying woman, I panicked. What did I do wrong? Oh my God. So
I know that feeling. So yes.
Yeah, I kept, you know what I'm talking about. I kept my cool, and she turned around and she looked at me. She says, Nicky, you didn't know this, but when you and your little son came to visit me and my little son asked me, mommy, who are we going to go meet? You know how little boys do that, right? And all kinds of fire and excitement. And she looked at him and she goes, oh, we're going to go meet Nicky Billou and his son. And then she said to me, all of a sudden, my little boy was no longer excited. In fact, he got very serious very fast. And he had this serious look on his face. And he looked down and he lowered his voice and he said, oh, mommy, are we going to meet the man who saved our family?
Oh.
And brother, I looked at her and I started to cry. And I don't cry. I'm an old school man. I don't cry in public. And I cried. I cried unashamedly. We hugged. And in between her tears, she said, Nicky, you didn't know this, but when I came to meet with you for the first time, we were about to lose our home. The bank was going to foreclose on us. We hadn't paid our mortgage in months. And my husband and I were fighting every single day. And we have 3 small children under the age of 12. And it looked like we were going to break up. We were literally on the verge of losing our beautiful family.
Yeah.
And she said, and now we're not. And this humbled me in 2 ways. Number one is, you never know what someone's dealing with. You never know. They may not be comfortable in telling you, but they could be dealing with something really intense. And it's really important to bring that loving servant's heart to every interaction and every conversation. And I know, you know, every single day I'm looking for another person like this lady, who's someone else who's going through a hard time, who's maybe been disappointed by somebody who they've gone to for help. And I ask God to put them in my path so that I have another opportunity to be worthy of his trust in me so that I can serve that individual. And the other thing that was pretty amazing was we had 8 people in the room who, you know, were new and potentially going to take us up on our upsell. And usually we hand out the registration forms and some of the people sign up right away. Some of them don't sign up and some of them need a little bit of persuasion. Nobody needed persuasion this time. They all signed up on the spot. And in fact, 2 of them had come to me prior to this and said to me that, you know, they knew I had an upsell and they weren't going to do it. And one fellow, this is how he did it. He said, Nick, come here. I said, what? He said, listen, I want you to know, I know you have an upsell. I know you have an upsell. I just want you to know, I'm not going to be buying your upsell. I don't want you to be disappointed now. So I want to give you a heads up. I'm like, okay, buddy, whatever. And he walked over to me. He was the first guy to sign up. He walked over to me and he just pointed at me like this again. And excuse my language, he said, you son of a bitch. I'm like, whoa. He said, I wasn't going to sign up. But I guess you're not full of crap. And I do need some help with my business.
Well, there
and that's the other thing that it taught me. When someone is having that hard level pushback, it's not personal. They've probably been disappointed by somebody who let them down. They probably have had an experience with somebody who was not honest with them. And it's my job, again, not to let that get in the way of seeing the great person within them and to still be of service and to still be of caring and kindness and love to them. And to me, if you're asking me what a thought leader's job is, yeah, it's your job to develop your IP. Yeah, it's your job to have great information for people and be able to solve problems for them. But your biggest job is to care about that person enough that they can see it and they can feel it. Because the great American poetess Maya Angelou once said, people will forget what you said to them. People will forget what you did for them. But people will never, ever forget how you made them feel. And that's your job. Make them feel loved and cared for. And I'm done.
And I think that's really, I think that's a great way to end the segment because we have to go on to a commercial, but I am really moved by that story. And I can only think, Nicky, that you have helped a lot of people in those situations but just maybe not had it so visibly displayed to you. So I think you deserve a lot for that. So
Yeah, what a great way to live your life. Right?
yeah, absolutely.
This is Passage to Profit with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart. Our special guest, Nicky Billou. If you missed anything he said, you really do want to go back and hear it. And it will be on our podcast tomorrow, anywhere you find your podcasts. Right now, we're going to break. We'll be right back. Ta-da.
Ta-da. That was great. I mean,
It was excellent.
That was amazing.
Thank you.
That was amazing.
That was very profound. And that, you know what, that was great for radio because, you know, radio loves a story. And you could feel you reaching through the sound waves and really getting to people. I mean, that was really good.
That was amazing.
you.
So,
Appreciate that.
yeah. So I'll bring us back. All
Yeah.
right.
So we're going to do power move.
And Kenya, who's power moving today?
So it is Zeb Evans. He is the founder of ClickUp. It's a productivity software company.
Okay.
Mhm.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, everybody. It's Passage to Profit with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart. And we have just been moved by Nicky Billou's really powerful story, and really demonstrating how the impact that truly caring about somebody and helping them can have on somebody's life. And
It
I
can
think,
make you rich too.
and it can make you rich too. But can you just imagine the relief that that woman and her family felt as the
Right.
money was coming in?
And
Like
they
after
didn't lose
being
their house,
destitute
yeah.
and then almost losing their house, and then in a matter of months seeing that. I mean, that just had to be such an amazing thing. So anyway,
Mhm.
Kenya, you're our Power Move person, and so tell us about Power Move.
Well, I'm happy to be the Power Move person. So thanks for having me. And for Power Move today, we're going to talk about entrepreneur Zeb Evans. So Zeb Evans almost died 3 times, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And he attributes these experiences to helping him overcome challenges and be a better entrepreneur. So today he's 33 years old and he is the founder of ClickUp, which is a productivity software company. They employ 1,000 people and raised $535 million in venture capital, and it's valued at $4 billion. So after a ruptured appendix, ski accident, Evans says these near-death experiences gave him something more valuable than the billions of dollars his company is worth. So he is our power move for today.
Wow.
Wow. Good for him. 33 years old.
But the story to our listeners is don't go out and nearly kill yourself in order to create $1 billion business, right? It's not worth it.
I think the story is if you want to make a lot of money really fast, get a tech business going.
Tell us about your project, Elizabeth.
Right. So for those of you who haven't heard this before, it's an online video directory of small businesses. And I've been working on it for a while, and I've been updating people on my progress every week. So if you'd listen, know I filed my non-provisional patent application a couple of weeks ago with Richard's name on it too, because he contributed.
It was all your idea.
No, you contributed
She's just playing the
ideas.
political angles to
No.
get me to.
But I want to say that writing the patent application, I drafted it myself. I'm a patent agent. Drafting the patent application really helped me define what the idea was and how it was going to work. But then after I did that, now I have to find some money for it. So we're using personal money, but I want to go after this one particular loan. I sat down and I totally redid my whole business plan. I've been working with coaches for a while, and we redid a lot of stuff in how this is going to work. So I totally redid my business plan, and I even put financials, and I put very conservative projections, and I could see how tech companies can make, if you can scale, if you figure out how to scale, you can really make a lot of money really fast. So anyways, I had some novel ideas for scaling that I hadn't thought about before doing my business plan. So doing the business plan gave me I mean, you need to do it if you're ever going to go after money from anybody, but you need to do it for yourself. And I did not do the lean startup business plan. I did the full blown, everything I had business plan, projections, everything. But it really gave me a better feel for how this thing is really going to work going forward. I had timelines. I had what I'm going to try to accomplish every quarter, the whole shebang. So that was really useful.
Well, when you become a tech mogul, you're not going to kick me out the door for some boy toy, are you? Or at least stay with me as co-host for Passage to Profit. Okay, that's all I ask. Okay.
Do that. You know me better than that. Anyway,
All
with
right.
that ridiculous comment, I really want to hear about this Wesana Health with Daniel Carcillo, because this is cutting edge new stuff, and he is right on the cusp with this. So welcome, Daniel. Tell us all about Wesana Health.
Thanks for having me, guys. So I come from the world of being a professional athlete. I was a professional athlete in the NHL for 12 years. I won 2 Stanley Cups with the Chicago Blackhawks. I fought 164 times, and I suffered from 7 traumatic brain injuries and probably hundreds of others that were undiagnosed. At the age of 30 in 2015, I was dealing with early onset dementia. So things like short-term, long-term memory loss, appetite loss, slurred speech, headache, head pressure, insomnia, impulse control issues, on top of anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation. And so I had to make a decision to step away to regain my health. I've been on a brain health journey now for the last 9 years. The first 5 years was dedicated to listening to the white coats, essentially the medically accepted treatments. So going to stroke rehabilitation centers, CTE brain banks, learning about neurodegenerative disease, reading as many PubMed papers as I could to understand what happened in my brain and how I could fix it. And I got to a point where I became extremely dark, suicidal, started to make plans to unburden my family and friends around me. And the number one cause of death is suicide after a traumatic brain injury. It happens a lot with women of domestic violence, athletes, as well as our veteran community. And luckily I was saved by an invitation to go to a decriminalized city in Denver, Colorado, and try a new treatment, which has been approved 2 times now, FDA breakthrough therapy designation with the FDA, in psilocybin. So it's the active ingredient in magic mushrooms. And I went there, sat with a PhD biochemist who was able to properly create an environment. The environment is much more important than the actual medicine that you're taking. And I had a really great experience. I took a very high dose of psilocybin, which is what's happening in a lot of these clinical trials right now through the FDA. And I woke up the next day, I describe it as feeling the way I should. I'm a very big advocate for mental health, concussion, but also diagnostics. So taking a picture of our blood, biomarkers, and then the brain, which I did before the ceremony. And then I took another picture of all of that 6 months after. So 1 high dose of psilocybin, a low dose therapy, which is non-hallucinogenic, over an extended period of time, 6 months to be exact, retested my brain and blood. All of my symptoms were either lessened in intensity or all but faded away within that time period. And the brain scan came back with no abnormalities, and the blood work came back the same. So then I started to advocate for decriminalized nature and use my platform and talk about what had happened to me to hopefully help. There's over 6 million people that go to the ER every year for concussion, and there's no FDA-approved pharmaceutical yet. We just get prescribed Wellbutrin and antidepressants that tend to increase other symptoms as well as suicidality. And so decided to create a company. I raised $22 million, took a company public within 3 months, and then we recently just spoke to the FDA in March 11th, in a pre-IND meeting. So an IND is investigational new drug application. And I filed 2 method patents. So nothing on the actual substance. We will file more formulation patents to protect ourselves for this program.
We'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
On
Go
the
ahead.
I was just going to say on the pharmaceutical side, patents are the thing. So definitely following the right path there. How is
Yeah.
it-
So go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, how is the FDA responding to this new treatment? I can imagine you're blowing a few minds over there.
Absolutely not. No, this research has been going on now since 2013. And the FDA actually fast-tracked our progress. So they told us that we didn't need to put it into healthy human beings because, like I said, this has already been designated FDA breakthrough therapy designation. There was a recent survey done that over 15 million people are using psychedelics just in America alone, and have been for quite some time. And you guys aren't hearing about, deaths related to it. Specifically psilocybin, the LD50, lethal dose is over 1,500 grams. So you just can't eat enough to make yourself, die. So it's a pretty safe medicine.
That sounds like kind of almost like a miracle drug, right? In some ways, are there any side effects that you think?
It's most definitely not a miracle drug. So do not take my framing and my story out of context. It is something that the side effect, if you will, is the hallucination. So nowhere in medicine do we actually have a framework for mental health treatments that get down to the core of our trauma. What we do here in America and worldwide is we treat the symptoms. So we have a healthcare system that isn't getting to the root cause of our problems. And that's what these psychedelic medicines do. And that is essentially how you can move past your trauma in a very short amount of time. On top of all the anti-inflammatory, antioxidant benefits that you do get specifically from psilocybin.
Wow.
So how does it help with your trauma and with the hallucinations? Like, how does that work?
Is it
So
are the hallucinations a byproduct, or is the drug actually, what's going on in there? What do you think is going on in there?
So this medicine has been used for tens of thousands of years by indigenous tribes. It's been used 3 different ways, specifically magic mushrooms or psilocybin. So coming of age ceremonies, so around 7 to 10 years old, they would give this to their child, and they would tell them to go out and hunt and then come back. That's where they get all of the nicknames. And they would come back to the tribe. And as a coming of age ceremony, older men in the tribe would take smaller amounts of this medicine to hone in visual acuity as well as auditory acuity for hunting and war. And then the shaman, or the medicine woman or man, anytime there was sickness in the tribe, would come in with a large dose ceremony, dose the group or the village, and essentially knock out the depression or the flu or whatever that village was dealing with. So from the context of that, we have a lot of knowledge base, not we, mostly these Native American tribes. And so what people have been doing now is taking this information and applying it in the medical context. And what happens when you take this medicine, it has an amazing ability to exasperate what is at the forefront of the mind. So if you are very intentional, so there's 3 things that you have to manage: setting, and dosage. So your set is your mindset. Why are you taking this medicine, and what do you want to accomplish? Intention. Your setting is where you take it. So you may hear things where people take too high of a dose and they go to a concert and they have a really bad trip. That's because you got 2 things wrong: dosage and the actual setting that you took it in. So in therapy and where these clinical trials are happening, it's 1 person to 1 individual, high dose, lying down, 432 hertz music, just a really calming environment to then work with the therapist to process the trauma based off of the set intention that you brought to the ceremony.
Fascinating.
Wow.
That's really
cutting edge. I feel like I'm in a
Cutting edge.
sci-fi movie right now.
So, Nikki, do you have any questions or comments for Daniel?
So I didn't know you were an NHL player.
So Nikki, I grew up in King City, so not very
no
far
way.
from you.
You're close to me, man. You're not too far from me.
Yep.
I interviewed Bobby Hall on my podcast. He's become a friend of mine, man. So the great Chicago Blackhawk. So God bless you for that. That's awesome. I'd love to connect with you offline and bring you on my show. It'd be fun to have a chat with you about hockey and about this.
Absolutely.
I had a fellow on I have 2 podcasts. I have a podcast I do for men. I had a fellow on my podcast for men, Dr. Evan Lewis, and this guy is really big into using psychedelics to treat, injuries like the ones you've talked about, but also to treat people with psychotic kind of mental illness. You know what I mean? The kind of folks who could harm themselves or other people with that. And I'm wondering if inside of what you guys are trying to do with your company, that's an area that you're exploring as well.
So it's not, but there are essentially what we propose to the FDA. There's no well-validated endpoints for traumatic brain injury because it's so heterogeneous, meaning each person is so different. It's just going to be near impossible to nail down these types of endpoints. People are working on it. But so what we have to research are the validated symptoms that FDA has already validated, meaning like traumatic brain injury related depression, anxiety, the things that are most prevalent. Because if we don't focus on that, then I would never be able to try to work within that framework. I have heard a lot of Evan's research, and people with psychosis or voices, psilocybin, and there's a lot of literature on this that people can go read, has really helped to not remove the voices, but similar to what it did for me, I had a lot of negative self-talk when I was a hockey player, because that's just, we always get yelled at, and that's sometimes how we motivate ourselves.
My youngest boy plays goalie, man, double A.
Oh, so yeah. So what the amazing thing that happened, and I didn't have this intention, but after the ceremony, I started to talk to myself in a positive manner. And as you know, Nicky, the heart knows and the soul knows. And that is the same experience that happened with these patients that tried these high doses of these psychedelics. The voices didn't go away, but they turned into more positive, reinforcing types of voices. And
that's huge. This is something I've never told anybody before. I don't know if I should talk about this, but my brother was severely mentally ill, and he heard voices, and there was never anything anybody could do for him. And the voices told him to kill me, which he didn't manage to do. But it would have been great if some of those therapies would have been available back then. And I can only imagine how many people it can help now.
Yeah, I'm sure that knowledge existed, but it was just a distrust of the information source that kept it from getting into the public. If it wasn't developed in a university or something, right, it couldn't have any value. And it turns out that you have these thousands of years of human trials, essentially, and we just missed it. So I think
I should mention this is not obviously medical advice. And I was just in Washington on the Hill, spoke to over 100 Congress staffers with the Psychedelic Medicine Coalition and Melissa Lavisani last week. We spoke to Senator Schumer's number 2, Senator Booker as well. And we're trying to get more funding for research, to basically research a number of different variety of conditions. Obviously, most of the research is pointing towards depression, treatment-resistant depression, anxiety, PTSD. MAPS is in phase 3 with the FDA using MDMA, or ecstasy as most of us know it, for PTSD. And it's a really simple solution if you think of it objectively. Number one, they were using this in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and 70s before everything got scheduled to Schedule 1 and the Nixon era. And so it literally just shut down all research. But we were scratching the surface, and we were close to integrating it into psychiatry. And when the war on drugs happened, everything essentially stopped. And it's since been revived around 2003, and it's just a really amazing, exciting time to be alive. It's also I think a difficult time to be alive, because we get shown a lot of information. But what I do like to say is, as Alan Watts said, it's yin and yang. It's for as much good there's just enough bad, and for enough bad there's just enough good. It's a really healthy balance of 50-50 in the universe, and it's always been like that, and it will always be like that no matter what they decide to show us. And I think that this is part of that good that'll help a lot of people heal.
Can I ask you though? I mean, just that I grew up thinking of psychedelic mushrooms as being a danger and something, because of the freaky trips and everything like that. And what's your opinion on recreational use? I mean, do you think that that's a direction that we should go, if or not? Do you think it's better really if it's just in a controlled environment?
So this is what I believe. I believe that everybody has a right to their own decision-making process and consciousness. I believe that two of the Schedule 1 drugs, being cannabis and mushrooms that grow out of the earth, that the government has deemed illegal with no medicinal value and highly abusive, it's incorrect. And we, as a nation, are now going through the most rigorous scientific process, which is the FDA. Unfortunately, I have to raise over $200 to $300 million to go through this process. And this is with an isolated compound. I cannot create a full spectrum medicine. So what I believe about recreational use is that when I first found this therapy, I started to do these decriminalized nature movements, and they're really well done. And there's a lot of really good resources. So harm reduction, I am 100% behind. Meaning, if you are going to try these medicines, you need to do your research, and you need to do them in a responsible way. But there's over 100 cities now in the United States that have decriminalized magic mushrooms, MDMA, psilocybin, as well as cacti and ayahuasca. So in these cities, there are a lot of programs where people are teaching others how to use this medicine. And if we do that in a responsible manner, I think that is one avenue that can work. There is a statewide medical program that was approved in Oregon, Measure 109. It will be the first statewide psilocybin program. And those applications open up January 2nd in 2023. So you will no longer have to fly to Mexico, Peru, and out of the country for fear of being arrested to use this medicine. And I also believe in the path that I chose as far as developing a drug, because I think concussion survivors need a diagnosis and they need a drug to take, because as you heard at the beginning of this podcast, when I started talking, I was not going to be able to manage my life and my symptoms as well as grow, et cetera, with the recreational aspects. So I believe in statewide run programs approved by state medical boards. I believe in working on legislation to deschedule these drugs that have been deemed FDA breakthrough therapy designation, and some of them that are past phase 3. So there's a lot of efficacy. And I believe in the decriminalized nature movement as well, where people should have access to their own decision-making power and medicine.
That's excellent. So how can people get a hold of you if they want to join you with this movement?
Well, I encourage people to go to decriminalizenature.com if you'd like to learn about the statewide initiatives. I encourage people, MAPS is an amazing resource and an amazing organization. Just to give you a little tidbit, they are curing people. This is a cure. 67% of respondents no longer, after a 12-week period of the psychotherapy is a really big aspect to this, and 3 administrations of the drug over a 12-week period, 67%, which are mostly sexual abuse survivors and veterans, no longer qualify for a PTSD diagnosis. Okay,
Wow,
so we're talking about cures.
Right.
So they are an amazing resource.
Okay, yeah,
And
we're going to have to run.
Of
But
course,
so
yeah.
that was maps.
Maps, MAPS, and
I
then people can just follow me on social media, and I'm going to be, a lot more vocal now that we are kind of, getting some finality with our company.
Excellent. I have one quick last question before we sign off for this segment. Are those your
Sure.
2 Stanley Cups behind you there?
Yeah, they're my mini trophies. Yeah, when you win, you get a mini replicas of the trophies.
That's great. I was a Blackhawks fan. I grew up in Chicago, so
Oh,
I
nice.
remember watching Bobby Hull.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Bobby
actually
Hall
play.
is amazing, man.
Yeah,
He's a
Stan
beast.
Mikita.
Yeah.
Stan Mikita.
Uh-huh.
And the man.
Yeah. All
So,
right.
so that, you know what, that is groundbreaking. You are really pushing the envelope of medicine, and I applaud you for that. That is really cool. Now we're going to go a different direction, but still something totally cool. I love what Jav is doing. So we have Jav Sid with Cut and Make Crafts, and she's, the old crafting where you sit and you cut with a pair of scissors, all this. She's using a computer and telling people how to use computers to help them with their crafting and giving them designs, all sorts of stuff. So welcome, Jav. Tell us all about what you're doing.
Hello, thanks for having me. So I am Jav from Cut and Make Crafts, and I teach people how to design and sell SVG cut files. So for those of you who don't know what SVG cut files are, there are images. In simple term, they're just images that are compatible with the cutting software, which is used by the cutting machine to cut out the graphics. So basically, you design a SVG on your computer, you upload it on the design software, the machine reads it and cuts it out on a vinyl, like an iron-on vinyl, and then you can put it on your t-shirt. I have a sample for you to see for those of you who are watching on YouTube. So this
So
little,
she's holding up a t-shirt with the letter M and a snowman and a snowflake. And this was cut out of vinyl by the cutting machine, right? And
yep,
you designed that pattern, right? And then it
yep,
was an iron-on, right? So
yep, that's
very cool.
correct.
I mean, I personally, I don't look good in pink, but I like the
Pink. But you have you're teaching other people how to do this, right?
Yep. So I help crafters with full-time jobs, busy moms who don't have enough time to sell physical handmade products, to instead sell digital cut files so that they can make passive income on autopilot, so that they don't have to be in their business 24/7 when they have other things to work on.
Well, that's really great. I mean, there's a huge market out there for creatives and crafting, and it's a neat way to express yourself. If you have a design, or if you have an idea for a design, you can help them create the files, correct? And sort of put a professional finish on it, and then you can give these away as gifts, or you also have a commercial license, right? So if somebody comes to you, then they can use that for commercial purposes and sell it. What's the difference between the two types of licenses?
So when it comes to digital cut files, it can get really tricky, but it's very simple. There are 2 types of licenses that comes with an SVG cut files usually, or any most of the digital art that's out there. So there's personal license and there's commercial license. With the personal license, you can create to give as gifts to friends and families, but you can't really sell the physical products made out of the digital files that you bought. And then there's a commercial license, which allows you to sell the physical products that you make using the digital cut files. So for example, if somebody makes this t-shirt to sell at a craft fair or in their Etsy shop, then they would need to have the commercial license for that design. Or else they won't be able to sell it. And if they get caught, they are gonna
get in big trouble. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to go to Kenya for a question.
Yeah, sure.
Was curious, is can you use this for mass production? Like how many units can you produce at one given time?
Yes, you can definitely do it. It totally depends on how good you're at it. So some professional t-shirt makers, they'll make around 20 to 30 t-shirts in 1 hour if they're super good at it, if they're pros and they have a streamlined process for cutting out the patterns, for cutting out the designs, and then applying it on the t-shirts like one after the other.
Yeah, it's really interesting how this has evolved, and it's sort of part of the gig economy. And it's really neat because it allows anybody who wants to make some extra money to make a small investment, right? And if you're creative and can get people are attracted to your designs, then it's a great way to make a second income for sure.
What's special about this was she was able to make a procedure for it that people could follow. So I think that's the hard part. It's like, yeah, I'm really creative. I can make these designs, but then how do I monetize it? And she was able to do that. So Nikki, do you have a question or comment?
Jav, you're extremely creative. First of all, congratulations on coming up with a really cool, innovative way to do something. What's your monetization plan? How do you plan to turn this into a fabulous revenue stream for yourself?
So I've already turned this into a revenue stream. So I have like a blog where people can get free SVG cut files, and then I also sell my designs on multiple platforms. I also do business coaching for people for moms or crafters with full-time jobs who want to design and sell SVG cut files, because you don't really need a lot of initial investment when you're starting out with this niche. You just need to learn how to use the software, and if you're creative, you can literally create your designs and get them up and see the money coming in matter of days. Like, for example, one of my clients, within 10 months, she went from 12 sales to more than 700 sales. From selling on one platform, she is now selling on 3 different platforms. So if you're consistent and if you are crafty, there's nothing stopping you from growing your business in just a couple of months.
I think that's amazing. There's a lot of people who are doing this. Is this like a big marketplace of people?
Yes, definitely. Like, especially right now, the cutting machine industry is just growing and growing, and is expected by 2023, it's expected to be around $1 billion. Like, still something new.
Yeah.
It's still something new, and there's a huge growth. There's a huge market out there. So still a lot of people can make a ton of money in the next couple of years, even if they start now.
So
I really like that. That's a beautiful marketplace. And I think you can turn that, you could actually turn this into a comprehensive licensable system. One of my former business associates did that in the bookkeeping industry, and they created like a program to help bookkeepers turn what they do into a business rather than just like hourly rates. I think you could do the same thing. It could be a wonderful piece of thought leadership for you.
I love that.
Yeah, that sounds really great. One thing though, you have to be careful with is the copyrights. If you create a file of like the Harley Davidson logo or something like that, just expect Harley Davidson to come after you, right? Because they're very aggressive about protecting their logos. So, and that's been a challenge for this industry, I think, because on the one hand, some of the producers want the income from reproducing, trademarked logos, and on the other hand, the companies who have the logos hate it because it's like trying to put out 1,000 different fires, and it's a real challenge. So.
I heard an interesting thing. I was listening to Elvis Duran on Saturday, and a woman made shirts saying "I love Elvis Duran" in the morning show without permission, and he was like, "I'm okay with it." And they had a discussion about it. And it's like, well, that is copyright infringement. I don't know how iHeart or whoever pays him to have a radio show would feel about it. But what I thought was the most interesting thing about that discussion was that they found out about it. So
Right.
they're always checking these
They're always
things.
checking. That's right. They're always looking. And yeah, I mean, and just a couple of weeks ago, we had a segment about a podcaster who was an Oprah fan, and she was talking about Oprah, and and Oprah actually filed a lawsuit against that podcast because the podcast was called uh, All Things Oprah or something like that, and they were using her name. So she took the opposite approach. She felt like her
Right.
brand was worth
But-
protecting.
Right. But for these SVG files, I think that's right. You just have to be careful not to infringe on anybody else's rights. But
Mhm.
I think the true creators love this outlet, right? Because I'm not crafty. I'm not one of them, but people like Kenya, who is just amazing. She
Right.
came up with a logo for Passage to Profit, and
I don't know. Are you a crafty person, Kenya? Do you like crafts?
Not particularly. I mean, I definitely can create things. Like I would consider myself to be very visual, so I can slap something together if I have to.
Well, our daughter would like it because she likes crafts. She likes to knit and paint and do all of those
coming
things.
up with the designs, though, like I think there's a certain mind type, and Kenya's is one of them, that can come up with these kind of designs that are original.
Right.
And I think this is an excellent business for people like that.
So how can people get in touch with you, and how can they learn more about um, your 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 business and more about SVG design, Jav?
So it's very simple. Just check out my websites, cut and with the letter N, make crafts, no dots, no hyphens, just straight cutandmakecrafts.com. You can visit my website and check out the free masterclass where you can learn how to start your own SVG cut file business. And you can follow me on Instagram for all the fun stuff and behind the scenes.
And are you Jav Sid on Instagram, JAVSID?
It's Cut and Make Crafts, the name of
Okay.
my website.
And what's the name of your blog?
It's Cut and Make Crafts.
Okay, so
That-
everything is the same. So
That
great
makes
job on the branding there.
So where are you located? I see you have a non-US phone number. So are you coming to us? Yes.
I am in Australia, Melbourne, and it's 3:29 a.m. over here.
You're
It's-
amazingly alert for 3:29
No, I've been yawning.
You a night owl? Do you stay up all night creating these designs and
Yeah.
thinking of new ways to teach people? Wow, that's amazing. Well, we're really glad that you're on the show because this is such a great business for a person. And for somebody who is at home with kids or somebody who doesn't want to work full time, like so many people left the workforce because of COVID, don't want to go back. And if they can do something like this, if they're really creative, they can make money and they don't have to go back. They can do it on their own terms.
Exactly.
I want
exactly.
I want one of these machines for my birthday coming up.
You want a cutter machine?
Yeah. She said it's a low cost thing for business.
Well, no,
I'm
there's-
very
there's two-
crafty.
there's two
I like
pieces-
I'd like
No.
to do woodworking and all that kind of stuff.
There's-
So I'm totally down with
There's
what
two
you're doing.
pieces to this, though, that what she's talking about. There's the people that make the designs for the software,
Right.
and then there's the people that use the designs with the cutter machines
Right.
to make the t-shirts the way
Oh.
they want them.
Okay.
Right. So
All right. Well, if you
if
can,
you want to if you want to cut out designs and
well, I
make t-shirts,
just
an
want
iron-on
personal
t-shirt.
licenses. Just personal licenses. Okay. I'm not going to go into the t-shirt business. We've got enough businesses. Anyway,
you can
you're-
also cut wood with it. So yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the scroll cuts. Is it very detailed, or is the cutting machine like powered by a laser? It's like a.
No. So this one is not a laser, but there's also another one, Glowforge, which is a laser cutting machine, which
Right.
has grown tremendously in the past 2 years. It just took off during the COVID.
Yeah, I
So-
think they're cool.
So, Jeff, if I just wanted like 10 t-shirts that said, Gearhart Law Family or something, I don't know, would I be able to find a
Nobody would wear them except us.
Okay, stop. Well, right. That's the point. That's why I only want 10. Would
The
there
kids wouldn't wear them. I mean,
just stop. Would I be able to find a person who has one of these Cricut machines? I'd like where would I find somebody to make me 10 t-shirts that's already doing this that you're talking about?
So you can find them on Marketplace. A lot of people sell custom t-shirts on Marketplace or even on Etsy. If you just look for customized t-shirts or something like that, personalized t-shirts, or even on Instagram, a lot of people, it's very easy to find them.
Okay, excellent. Well, I can see some Christmas presents coming up.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have to end this segment, and Nicky has to go be on another podcast because he's so popular. But thank you, Nicky, for joining us today.
For having
And
me. It was great to be here.
people can find you at ECircleAcademy.com. Is that right?
Yeah, that's a great place. There's all kinds of resources there. And if anyone wants to jump on a call with me, there's a button to book a call. And really great to meet everybody here. Love to stay connected. Jav, I love what you're doing. I'd love to have a
Thank
chat with you about it at some point, and love to stay connected with everybody. God bless you all. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank
Nicky.
you. Thank you, Nikki. Welcome back, everybody. It's Passage to Profit, and it's pandemonium here in the studio. So what is our question of the week, Elizabeth?
Our question of the week is, what business book have you read lately or you're reading now that you're finding value from? So let's start with Daniel. Daniel, what book are you reading?
So I am rereading for probably the 10th time. It's called The Joy of Living, Youngi Mingyur Rinpoche. And it's basically a beginner's guide to spirituality, meditation, breath work, and just living in the present moment.
Excellent. Thank you. So let's go
Welcome.
to Jav. Jav, what book are you reading?
So I am currently trying to learn everything about selling. So I am reading The Art of Closing the Sale by Brian Tracy. I just finished his other book, The Psychology of Selling. Loved it, learned a lot. So I'm trying to finish everything that he's written.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Okay, Kenya, you're up.
So I'm reading Exercise for the Soul by Dr. Bernie Siegel. And it's not really a business book, but it's helping me develop something that's related to my business. So
I think any work that you do on yourself is work on your business, right? So any book that is like helping you figure out yourself helps you with your business.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm reading the very good book by Stephen Chandler, and it's called Reinventing Yourself. So, so that's what I'm reading. And this is the second time I'm reading it.
Right. So I am reading a mystery book, but I'm also
I also read Dr. Seuss, by the way.
a while ago I read The Body Keeps the Score, which again is a self-help book telling you how you can try to release trauma from your body, how your body holds on to trauma, and how you can work on ways to release it. And Daniel is working in that same area, but he's using new medicines to do that. It's really an important area. So I enjoyed that book a lot. But what I'm actually reading for business right now is not a book, but I'm learning as much as I can about all the new stuff that Google is rolling out next year and kind of how to use it. So Google has some amazing new things. They're redoing a whole bunch of stuff, and I don't want to advertise for Google, but you'll see it in 2023, all the new stuff they're rolling out. So they're doing videos and blogs and stuff about it now. That's what I've kind of been focused on.
Sounds great. So
we had Nicky Billou on the show. He had to run to go be on another show, and he was with ECircle Academy, and he's all about thought leadership. And he has a seminar that he gives, or a series of workshops that he gives, that you can find on his website, ECircleAcademy.com.
he was an amazing guest,
Yeah.
very powerful speaker with very powerful stories.
And if you missed it, you really need to listen to the podcast tomorrow. And then we had Daniel Carcillo, and he has Wesana Health, and he is really trying to bring revolutionary new medicines that have been kind of pushed to the side because people thought they were fun drugs and not really medicines, but they really are medicines. He's trying to bring those to the forefront because they really do help people heal. And so you can get a hold of him through wasanahealth.com. And
Really exciting new area of medicine and therapy.
And also decriminalizenature.com is another place to look for the people that are, like he said, stuff growing out of the ground shouldn't be illegal to ingest. So anyways, there's a whole movement on this, and these medicines are helping people. And then we had Jav Sid with cutandmakecrafts.com, and that's spelled CUTNMAKE crafts.com. And she's helping people start businesses, people that are very creative, and it's just really cool what she's doing. And I forgot to spell Daniels. Daniels was WESANA health.com. So Daniels for the new medicines, and Jabs for if you have a few hours a day and you want to start a new business that you can just do from home. Cutandmakecrafts.com is a great idea.
Right. And so unfortunately, we need to sign off now for this week, but we'll return to this station next week with another episode of Passage to Profit. Before we go, I'd like to thank the Passage to Profit team, Noah Fleischman, our producer, Alicia Morrissey, our program director, and Mark Wilson, our syndication manager. Our podcast can be found tomorrow anywhere you find your podcast. Just look for the Passage to Profit show. And don't forget to like us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And remember, while the information provided during this program is believed to be correct, never take a legal step, or medical step for that matter, without checking with your legal or medical professional. That's it for Passage to Profit. We'll see you next week.